opinion matters when you discuss it properly, when you say why. So even when you go into, I used to be Catholic, so I know the other side of that too, you can sit there and say, is it murder, is it whatever else? But if someone's raped, if the woman is likely to die, then the Catholic system says, yes, you can under those circumstances up to this date. And generally they say within a certain number of weeks. So that's still not a complete blanket, no day after pill because you've been raped. It is a negotiation. And other people, Californians say, well, up to the age of 5. Picking on Californians, I know, but I mean, yeah, post-birth abortion, get rid of it, yeah. Yeah, I didn't really want it, yeah, take it away. Anyway, I'm being silly, but the whole point here is there's always debate, and in a society, we only really choose when we stop fighting with each other and argue. And that means transparency. Why we have different rules, why we have things that are restricted and private, means communicating between different people. It means arguing and debating, not yelling. Argument doesn't mean yelling. See, I've also got a degree in philosophy, so argument means something different for me than it does to most people on Twitter. To me, argument is you have an argument. It is logically sound and you can debate it. And although two parties may not agree, that comes down to value judgments. I value X, you value Y. This is where we each agree, this is where we don't agree. And everyone agrees on some things and not on others. So it's very simple. Transparency matters, and it means being intellectually honest enough to actually sit there and debate the parts that do and don't matter. And this is why I complain about anonymity. Anonymity doesn't give you the right to go out there and troll other people, and it doesn't give you open, transparent, free speech. Anonymity takes away free speech. So if we want privacy, we need people to be accountable for their actions. That doesn't mean that I even need to know who you are. Pseudonyms allow for privacy, but if they tie back to an identity, so that if you've done something wrong, there's a big difference. If I do something that is illegal, it is very different to if I have an argument about COVID policies. And right now, when we don't have that transparency, we lose both. Think about what we end up with in COVID, with people on one side going, trust the scientists. What the hell does that mean? I'm sorry, I'm a scientist, and I've got papers. I used to be a medical statistician in one of the many things I've done, and I've got silly papers on silly topics and to do with medicine and where I've acted as a statistician, and I can review these things and I actually know what the hell the numbers mean. So I'm happy to debate with people because the mean isn't necessarily what matters, it is the confidence interval, and where you draw that line makes a big difference to things. And having that debate matters. As a society, not just being told what we should do matters. So privacy goes back into that as well. And if we want to have open debate and we want to have a free society, we need to be able to openly communicate. And that links back to identity. And if we can't find out who is causing problems, or who is gaslighting, or who is pretending to be something else, how do we have a real conversation? In those coffee shops, those things that built modern Western society and the foundations of republics and democracies that we have now, not everyone said, hey, I'm such and such. Some of them lied about their name, but people knew that they were someone. Moreover, unlike Twitter, you can't go into a coffee shop and be 10 people. You can't go, I'm changing chairs. I disagree. I also disagree. I agree with him. Yeah, so there's a difference. Whereas on Twitter, you can sit there and go, I completely disagree with what I just said. And you can have hundreds of sort of bots, all slightly different, all saying crap. That's not privacy. That is anonymous coward land, because you are a coward when you do this. Why? Because it takes guts to go out there and say something that matters. And then you're actually able to change. So, Reverend King put himself at risk. Nelson Mandela put himself at risk. I'm not a big fan of the policies of Gandhi, but he went out there and put himself at risk. Notice all these people who changed things didn't sit there as anonymous cowards and talked. So privacy means not going into all the things that are extraneous. We don't choose people or their opinion because of what they do behind closed doors. That's part of privacy. I can say my opinion on something like this, and it doesn't matter what my sexuality is or what my job title is or anything else, unless it happens to be I'm giving you medical advice and I'm actually a qualified doctor, that sort of stuff. If I want to have privacy, then I need to be able to share the right amount and limit it. And that's where transparency comes back to it. I actually, and we've been working on more translucent at Endchain, because by translucent it means seeing enough. Rather than everyone seeing everything, because in an open public blockchain there are no real controls, it's open there. So how do we do it? We set limits on what can be seen and how. So that's why I'm saying rather than complete transparency in a system, we now make it translucent and allow that system to be open when needed. So an example would be if you have someone who is a troll and is shutting down communication and discourse and debate, then know how to track back that individual and stop their account. Not so that you're stopping them from free speech, not so that you stop people having a valid argument, but so they will have a valid argument. If you're sitting there just throwing shit for the sake of throwing shit and bullshitting and making things up, you're not debating, you're not arguing. So, storage limits. In the EU, and we're still covered by some of these provisions in Britain because we haven't changed the rules, there are limitations and the right to be forgotten and other such things. We have this thing called a blockchain now, and theoretically it can make it hard to get rid of data, although it is possible. There's a section in the white paper on pruning, but how do we know that it's gone? Well, that's where we can actually start building some of this in. And once we have transferred information and spent a UTXO, and it is prunable, then it should be prunable. And this is an important part of data storage as well. Those individuals who need that information can keep it. So what I want you to think about for a second is, as we scale Bitcoin, the cost of maintaining information becomes critical. When what I'm talking about and getting in 2030 and beyond into the realm of 10 billion transactions a second, I want you to think about what that number means. 10 billion every second, every day, every year, every time someone does something. That is a lot of data. We are getting to petabytes of data stored every year. At that level, people are not running this at home. They will have SPV, they will have node implementations, and they will have selected data for corporations. As Amazon, what information do you want?
Everything.
No, you don't. Amazon do not want everything.
Because there are some vulnerability aspects. If there's too many attributes, that gets leaked, stolen.
Yes. And even companies don't want to keep records after a certain amount of time. Companies are quite happy to lose records as soon as the legal legislative requirement disappears, because shareholders can still go into things a decade later if they have all the details. But if the tax records require you have 7 years and, oh, we have a data destruction policy, everything's gone, sorry. Can you hand that over in court? No. Why not? We got rid of it. Why did you get rid of it? Because we have a data retention and destruction policy that says after 7 years, all data, blah, 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 blah. And when you go to court and go, I want it, I'm sorry, you can't have it. It doesn't exist. So think about this for a moment. Nodes will store information, and there will even be archive nodes for a price. But if we have, in the future, maybe 40, 50, 60 petabytes worth of data being stored every year, year on year. And we don't, I mean, we're talking today's standards, so we're not putting all that extra information, and we're not insane like me, who had, and Ben knows this, big computers at home that actually had multiple petabytes worth of data. Or ones at an office in Australia that I nearly got kicked out of the building because it turned out that I went over the weight requirements and was causing the floor to crack. Hard drives weigh a lot, by the way. So I had to distribute the machines more. Yes, I've done that before too. Then you're going to want to get rid of information, aren't you? If you're Amazon, you want data related to Amazon. Do you care about random stuff from some guy in Uzbekistan who records the movement of gerbils? No. You don't care. Who here has read the Harry Sheldon series of Asimov? Come on, someone's got to have read it. At least one, yeah. What was he? What was Harry?
Sheldon, a psycho-historian.
Yes. And what does a psycho-historian do?
They make mathematical models based on the entire human history to predict the future.
And funny enough, some of the idea of blockchain actually came from that. You know why?
Because you have an accurate record of history.
So in Asimov's Sheldon series, he had all of the records. This is 10,000, 11,000 years from today. And in that future, 10,000 years from now, remember Rome's only 2,000 years ago, everything has been recorded. From about now. Someone around now started recording everything. No, they don't, but we will. And 10,000 years from now, every record exists in the novel. And as a psychohistorian, one of the things he does is he digs into the records that everyone's forgotten. Imagine how much data is there. Imagine all of that information. I want you to think about 10,000 years worth of storage. Can you Google something and find out what happened in the world, or will you know? Unlikely. So things become lost just because there is so much information. And this is a critical part of Bitcoin and blockchain. Scaling helps privacy and confidentiality. Because in the future, there will be so much information that isn't directly linked, that isn't tied to an identity directly. Try find it. It's not a needle in a haystack. It's a planet full of haystacks, and one of them has a needle. Do you think that's easy? Now, at the same time, traceability means we can go back and prove things. Like a hashing function, it's one way. So if I go to someone that I've spent money with, I can get